and dive into it. Welcome everyone to our, again, bi-weekly meeting. We're once again pleased to have a presentation from the DOE. I'm going to hand over the introductions for our speaker today to Jillian. So go ahead and take it away, Jillian.
Thanks, Josh. It is my pleasure to introduce Kristen Ellis today. I'm just going to give a little bit of the background about her current role within the DOE, specifically with the Office of Environmental Management, and then a little bit about her background. So she currently serves as the Acting Director of Regulatory, Intergovernmental, and Stakeholder Engagement, as well as the Senior Advisor for STEM and Talent Acquisition. As Acting Director of Regulatory, Intergovernmental, and Stakeholder Engagement, Kristen oversees the EM Office of Regulatory Compliance and the EM Office of Intergovernmental and Stakeholder Programs. A Senior Advisor for STEM and Talent Acquisition, she assists future STEM needs of the EM workforce. She additionally advises on EM workforce issues, including inclusion opportunities for EM's next generation workforce and supporting partnerships building an EM talent pipeline. She previously served as the Chief of Staff under Secretary for Science, Paul Dabber, overseeing all daily operations, including personnel budgets, policy, media, and interface with the DOE senior leadership. That portfolio included over $14 billion in federal funding for fundamental energy research, energy technologies, and science, direct management of 11 of the department's national labs and user facilities, the environmental and legacy management missions, the Artificial Intelligence and Technology Program, the National Laboratory Operations Board, and technology commercialization activities for the department. Previously, she served as the Director of the EM Office of External Affairs, directing the media and congressional strategies of the EM complex. She also formerly served as the Director of EM Intergovernmental Office, partnering with national intergovernmental organizations, tribal governments, and community organizations. She previously served as the designated federal official for the EM Advisory Board. Earlier, she served within DOE's Office of Congressional and Intergovernmental Affairs, representing DOE at 2 White House committees, advising the Secretary of Energy on tribal government issues, and serving as the liaison to national and intergovernmental organizations. She received her Juris Doctorate in 2006 from the University of Baltimore School of Law and is licensed to practice law in the state of Maryland. She received a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from Western Maryland College, with concentrations in communications and journalism. She currently lives in Virginia with her husband and 2 daughters and is an active volunteer of the Girl Scouts of America. So without further ado, you can take over, Kristen.
Wow, when your bio's like less than a page long, but when someone reads it out loud, it really takes a long time. So that's very comprehensive. Thank you, Jillian. And it's also very awkward to sit there and listen to someone read about you, but lots of interesting things in there. You'll notice that I do not have a scientific degree, so you could save all of your really hard, groundwater questions for someone else besides me. But I am really excited about seeing some of you again. I had a chance to meet some of you in person in Phoenix at the Waste Management Symposia, and I'm really excited to see what this group of fellows is doing with your time. And, I do really think that, you guys are building this on the fly, and I hope this can be an interactive discussion today. I'm not planning to lecture for, 45 minutes about the history of EM. I'd like to have a back and forth conversation. And as you'll hear me talk about today, we have huge workforce needs in the department, and not just in the Office of Environmental Management, through all the offices at headquarters, out in the field, and I think you at least have some working familiarity about the type of work that we're doing out there in the EM portfolio. And I'm guessing none of your colleagues do, none of your friends, none of your social circles, because we continue to have a lot of challenges, even with people knowing about the existence of our program. So I'm hoping that, as you guys work through this fellowship, you can help us with some ways to kind of recruit, more people into this work scope, because we've got decades left to go of work to clean up, and, plenty of work for you all to have a healthy, productive, and fruitful career with the U.S. government, helping us tackle one of the number 3 government liability after Social Security and Medicare. And the third on that list is the Office of Environmental Management. That's a fun trivia point for your next party if you'd like to share that. But we will, why don't we kick it off with the slide deck? I believe that it was sent over to you all, and someone who's better at screen sharing than me, Julie. She does a great job. So we just wanted to kind of, like I said, if you all saw the slides in advance, it's a pretty hefty number. I'm not going to go through all 25 in a great amount of detail, but I do kind of want to give some context for our office, how we got to where we are today, and the types of work that we're working on now, and then leave some time for questions, and then just kind of, I'd love to hear from the students about how they're enjoying the program, and if there's any additional information we can share with you all. I know you guys are planning to meet, is it bi-weekly, just to kind of get caught up with the group, and I know you all are working towards a site visit, so I think that'll be a really neat trip in your future, and it's really good that we're able to finally talk again about in person and going out to sites, because it's been so long since that's been our norm. Why don't we flip to the next slide?
Can we get a copy of these?
Sure, I think Julie has them, and we can make them available maybe real time now while we're speaking, so everybody can kind of flip through at their own pace, or we can make them available afterwards. That's fine. So just, I think everyone's familiar, but just in case you haven't heard it, the mission of the Environmental Management Office dates back to the Manhattan Project era. And, before there was a Department of Energy, when we were involved in activities all across the country during World War II to support the development of first the nuclear bomb, and then, other future government research associated with nuclear power, and government-sponsored nuclear research took place all across the country, and a lot of that work still remains today, all these years later, and the variety of different chemical processes and uranium processing and plutonium processing and all sorts of, and even some contamination from just how they did work at those times. I mean, you've probably heard about PFAS now, which is a big chemical of concern, and it was used in a lot of fire suppression activities, and lead and asbestos and all those kind of things that aren't used anymore, but were present in many of our buildings. And we do still have many facilities that date back to, World War II era. So all those types of concerns are some of the things that we work on day to day. Why don't we flip to the next slide? If you go to our webpage, you can get more information about this here, but this is our mission statement. And, we divide the work into 5 different buckets, and tank waste, special nuclear materials, spent nuclear fuel. We make decisions based on risk and the highest level risk to the environment and to people. And so our budget is kind of divided in these categories, and these categories may exist in, you may have some sites where there are multiple activities, some tank waste, some transuranic waste. It really is, each site's got a variety of different challenges and things to remediate. If we could swap to the next slide, so the EM office was formed in 1989. It kind of coincided with the end of the Cold War, and a lot of the activities that had been happening at that time, we did have a Department of Energy officially by then, and a lot of those activities were done under what's now known as the National Nuclear Security Administration. But the kind of cleanup portfolio, how do we, clean this stuff up and remediate it, that was divided and given to the new Office of Environmental Management, which was formed in 1989. And this I like this map because it shows how much work we've already gotten done. And you see at one point, the footprint of how we had activities in so many different states across the country. And if you note now, the in progress sites, the green color dots, hopefully nobody's colorblind. We can walk you through which is which. We're slowly but surely decreasing the number of green dots and increasing the number of blue dots. And earlier this year, we were able to announce that we've completed our cleanup scope at the Brookhaven National Lab in New York. So we have one less site, and we're working towards continuing to do completion at the other locations. And it's a little bit misleading because, for those of you who have worked on the Hanford scope, we're scheduled to be at Hanford still for several more decades. So, even though we continue to make progress, it's generally on the easier to tackle projects, and the harder stuff and the things that we still need some technological and scientific assistance on are going to be out into several more decades. If we could flip to the next slide, it's another map one, just a little more detail about our current offices, our locations, and you can just have that for reference. And I kind of heard you all were talking about maybe doing a site visit to Oak Ridge or Savannah River site, and both of those are on that map, obviously. If we go to the next slide, what makes us unique, I think, is we've been able to be successful working closely with those who are impacted by our activities. And those are the folks that live in the states and the local communities and the tribal nations that are in close proximity to our sites. And CRESP plays a key role in that. Your consortium has a lot of academic relationships with stakeholder communities, and building on those, CRESP has had a key role in helping us kind of make better decisions and do better research about the various technologies that we need to be successful. But a lot of that is due to stakeholder engagement and building trust among the public that we're doing cleanup in a safe manner and in a way that's protective of the environment. And it's been we just continue to build on those successes and building trust with our communities. Let me pop to the next slide quickly. If you think back to the mission areas that we talked about in the different categories, this is another kind of way to kind of manifest how our budget gets divided. So you can think about it and how we split up the dollar across the different portfolios. And I should know this. Okay, there we go. It's in the middle of the slide. The 23 request. I don't know if you guys have had a briefing yet on how funding laws work in DC, which is, a longer conversation, but we are in the middle of, we have announced the proposed fiscal year 23 budget. They've, I think, completed all the congressional hearings that they're going to have about the budget, and we're waiting to see if they give us one for fiscal year 23. And the request that we had was over $7.6 billion for 1 year of funding. So, a significant amount of work to be done, and in a lot of different categories. And I will, let's turn to the next slide so we can continue to kind of walk through things. Another kind of unique factor of the EM program, that 90% of our workforce is contractors, and 95% of our budget ends up going to contracts and contractors. So it's not federal employees that are primarily out doing the work on the ground. Most of it is through our contractors. So I'll just put a plug in too that, if you are interested in this work scope and looking for a great career, it doesn't mean you have to go work for the government directly. There's lots of contractor companies that I'm sure you've heard of, Jacobs and Bechtel and Fluor and Amentum, which used to be AECOM and URS and all these other different titles. But a lot of great companies out there that have been involved with DOE for several years, decades even, doing this type of work. And it's a wide variety of jobs and types of engineers, scientists, groundwater experts, hydrologists, geologists, runs the gamut. So I imagine it's most of the academic specialties that are included in this group here today. But it just a wide variety of options and mission scope, and really fascinating work scope. I really think the more you talk to the mentors that you've been assigned with, and others that you encounter in the EM program, what you'll see is a really high motivation for the mission. And it's fascinating, interesting work, and there aren't many places that you can say that every week is different from the last. And you're facing new challenges and new opportunities to make great decisions that help make our environment cleaner. I mean, that's a pretty awesome mission. So I think you'll see that attitude from a lot of the EM employees that are involved in this mission scope. So I won't spend too much time talking about the different types of contracts that we use, but there's a lot of employees involved, lots of different funding sources, and if there's individual questions about individual sites or specific contracts, we can follow up with those a little later. So the remainder of the slides are kind of site specific activities that are going to be part of our latest budget request. So if we want to just flip to the next one, the Idaho Cleanup Project. The Idaho Cleanup Project is adjacent to the Idaho National Laboratory. And actually, I will go a little off script and just give you the quick tutorial on the national labs if you haven't had much exposure to those yet. In typical government fashion, we have 17 national laboratories run by 4 different offices in DOE. So it's a little confusing. Actually, it might be 5 now. Let me just do my non-scientific counting again. But the lab that is run by our Office of Environmental Management is the Savannah River National Laboratory, and it's in the Savannah River site. This slide for the Idaho Cleanup Project, the Idaho National Laboratory, is actually run by the Office of Nuclear Energy, and it's in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And we have 3 labs that are run by the National Nuclear Security Administration, which is a different office from DOE, and that's Los Alamos, Livermore, and Sandia. Then we have 10 labs that are run by the Office of Science, and some of those are a little more specialized with a very distinct field of studies, like the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab. They're not doing a lot of projects related to the Office of Environmental Management. We have, so we're counting now, that's 1, 2, 3, so 5 plus 10 is 15. There's 2 remaining. One of them is run by the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Colorado. And the last one is, again, confusing. It's in 2 different locations. One's in Morgantown, West Virginia. One's in Pittsburgh, and that's the National Energy Technology Laboratory. They do a lot of carbon capture, energy technology scope. But suffice it to say, the DOE National Laboratory Complex is, the huge source of U.S. government funding for scientific research, and it's to tackle U.S. government programs and projects and challenges and needs. And there's national security scope and environmental remediation and a whole portfolio of pretty much all of the science under the sun. And so if you all are looking for additional opportunities, internships, all sorts of other things, we can put you in touch with some resources there. Might be, I just offer that up from my previous time supporting the Undersecretary of Science. I got a lot more exposure to that. And, for most of the folks in the Office of Environmental Management, don't get as much visibility with the other national labs, but with Savannah River National Lab being our lab, that's a logical place to have some conversation as well. I know CRESP has done a lot of work with SRNL over the years as well. And if you guys do end up doing a site visit at Savannah River, I'm sure you'll stop by the lab as part of your visit. So as I mentioned before, there's a lot of content here for a variety of our sites. I don't want to kind of go line by line through that. I would like to encourage you all to take a look at these. And if you want to learn some more information about the various sites, please take a look and do so. If we could pop down to slide number 22, the heading says where we're headed, EM calendar year 22 priorities and strategic vision. This is a nice, and then we've got the link below if you want to kind of read this in fuller. But I like this slide because it kind of walks through the variety of the projects, the sites, the locations, the operations that we're working on during this calendar year. And we're building out our 10-year strategic vision, which is encapsulated in that document. But given the changes that are always happening, we treat that as a real organic document, and we are now updating it on an annual basis so you can see the progress that we've made there. But again, if you're interested in radioactive tank waste, lots of activity happening there at Idaho and Savannah River and Hanford. And, if your background is more geology, then maybe there's work at the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, which is a repository for transuranic waste in New Mexico. There really is, so much variety, and I don't want to go line by line through there, but want to just flag for you all to come take a look at some of our projects there and get some more information. If we pop to the next slide, this is a little more information about our relationship with CRESP and how we've worked with the CRESP team over the years. I can remember very early in my career in EM working very closely with David Costin and Kevin Brown on the Environmental Management Advisory Board, tasking for tank waste. And we had a team of scientists, delving in on all sorts of documents. And we ended up making more than 40 recommendations to the Secretary of Energy about how to improve the tank waste program in the Environmental Management Office. And at the time, we were building this scientific team, and Dave Costin and Kevin Brown, everyone wanted them on this team. And so we pulled them in. And, recognizing the great work that CRESP has done over the years on a variety of research topics and a variety of stakeholder topics and public policy topics. And so really, I don't want to speak to everything that they've been involved with, but they have been a great partner. And, we can certainly get some more information about any of these slides. We could have spent a whole day on. So I want to be mindful of people's time and making sure we have some time for questions. The next slide number 24, is the second to last. This is a quick encapsulation of some types of jobs that we're in dire need of. If you, in the USA Jobs site, if you haven't had familiarity with that, really encourage you to take a look. And it does take some time to kind of build all of the core components of your profile there. But once you get it going, you can set up email alerts and get notifications about new jobs. DOE is in the process of hiring 1,000 people to support new funding and new activities under the bipartisan infrastructure law. And that's outside of our Office of Environmental Management, but I'm just putting the plug out there. Trying to hire 1,000 people is a pretty big number for a federal agency. And I know they have some information on our webpage about that group and that set of hiring. But like I said, any job under the sun, almost, we've got needs of. And then the last slide that I will close with before we open it up for questions. I'm not going to say that we are the most adept social media giants out there, or even the most in federal government agency, but we are trying, and we do have Twitter and Facebook. I know that that's not the most popular social media out there anymore among the all the age groups reflected on this phone call today, but would also encourage you, we have a weekly newsletter that covers a variety of things. You can sign up for that on our webpage as well. And just encourage you all to try and learn more. And why don't we open it up for questions now? I'm sure we have some questions, and if I'm not the right person, we can get you some information from who is the right person. So Julie, do you want to kind of moderate raised hands, or what do you think makes sense for doing that? Maybe we could take down the screen so I could see all the participants a little better. There we go.
I think you're on mute.
Yeah, Julie, you're on mute right now.
We're not hearing you.
Maybe not Julie to facilitate then, if she has no audio.
All right, it looks like we have a question from Aaron and from Craig. So let's start with Craig.
Mine's a simple one. Kristen, thanks for the presentation. Just need to see all that portfolio. You started off with something that I knew was a big number, but I didn't realize how significant it was. I think you said that EM's liability is the third largest in the federal government, behind Social Security and Medicare, right? Wow, I mean, that's enormous. I knew it was big, but that really puts things in context, doesn't it? Okay, I want to make sure I heard that right. Wow.
Yep, you did, and it's hard to, for us to throw around, $7 billion a year, that's a pretty big number too.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, and what happens is, you've got 50 more years of work in some places, maybe it's a little less. All across the country, it's not going to get cheaper for that work to get completed 10 years from now. It's just going to be more expensive. So there's a lot of kind of estimates, and those numbers get updated routinely, and lots of government agencies like the GAO like to spend a lot of time comparing how we come up with those calculations. So that's a very rough estimate, but number 3, I don't think we're changing from number 3 on that list anytime soon.
Is it decreasing or increasing as a percentage of it?
Compared to the other two, or I mean, just I would say it's increasing just by, if you want to just take inflation as one measure. You think of what is happening in our economy now with, supply chain, gas prices, and that's just a snapshot for right now. So, and a lot of our budget costs, we call it min safe. So that means, even if we aren't doing cleanup, we still have costs associated with protecting our sites and keeping them environmentally compliant, and having security guards. So it doesn't matter if we finish the work or not. That is, until the work's completed, we still have those kind of site-wide infrastructure needs that are a big draw on the budget. So,
just following up a little bit. It also says that if we can do things a little better and kind of through the things we're doing, reduce costs, and that has a big impact when you put it in that scale. So that's a lot of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is. And, there's opportunities. And I think over the 30 years of our project and our programs, the technology continues to change, the improvements continue to be made, and we're always seeking new and better ways to make progress. And that's been very helpful. I'll give one quick example, and this is kind of a DC, you tell I'm a political science major. So, we have the Nuclear Waste Policy Act that was written in, 82, something like that. And the legislative definition in that law said that if waste originated from DOE activities, then it was considered high-level waste. Not because of its radiological content, but because it derived from US government activities related to waste. So that meant that, according to the law, it had to be treated and sent to a geologic repository, which is the most expensive way to treat the waste. And treating all waste as if it is high-level waste when radiologically it is not, maybe doesn't make the most sense economically. So a couple of years ago, with some endorsement from CRESP on this, we sought a reinterpretation of, how we're going to look at that waste. And so we had a waste stream from Savannah River where we were able to, prove that this 8 gallons did not radiologically meet the criteria for high-level waste, even though it did originate from DOE activities. And we were able to do the, NEPA analysis and do all the work and send it to a non-geologic repository, to a commercial facility, and dispose of waste and get it out of South Carolina that normally would not have a way to leave because of that congressional interpretation. And so and that's created a potential opportunity for us to maybe look at some other waste streams and be creative about how to treat them in ways that are not the most expensive way possible. And CRESP has been really useful in helping with some specific technologies and specific proposals for those types of work. Let's see, I see Aaron has his hand raised, but he works for me. So if anyone else has another question, I might have them go in front.
Megan
does.
hand raised, so let's go to Megan.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. Okay. Hi, Kristen. It's very, very nice to meet you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm a graduate student at Vanderbilt. And my area of study is primarily sort of nuclear safety analysis and things related to that. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, has the recruitment and talent acquisition process changed within EM and other DOE offices as a result of sort of the pandemic and people's opinions on remote work versus going into the office every day? And then my second one is a little more broad. It's, do you think the needs, sort of the talent needs of DOE will be changing over the next decade? And if so, how do you envision them to change?
Those are great questions. Thank you. I would certainly say that our thinking about recruitment has changed significantly since the pandemic. I wouldn't say that we're 100% implemented on figuring out what those changes are, but DOE, like everyone else, made the adjustment to moving to remote work, and in some ways, DOE has some unique challenges in that some of our locations are very geographically remote. And let me try to be diplomatic here. I don't think the Chamber of Commerce for Carlsbad, New Mexico is in the same kind of position as the Chamber of Commerce for Chicago, Illinois. And I don't know how many, millennials are dying to go move to Carlsbad, New Mexico. I haven't taken a survey, but I suspect it's not the same number who wants to go move to Chicago and live in someplace like Chicago. So having flexibility to have people maybe sit in different locations while still supporting our work, I think is going to be tremendously important to us moving forward. As far as, a whole lot of changes to the hiring and recruitment process, I know everyone complains about how hard it is to get hired into the federal government. And I wish I could tell you we've solved all those problems and fixed all of those things, but it does continue to be a challenge. But certainly, I think remote and increased telework are going to be key to a part of that. So your second question, could you remind me what the second question was? Yeah, so on that first answer.
Yeah, so just how do you envision sort of the talent needs of DOE and DOE EM changing over the next decade or so?
Yeah. I don't know that we're going to have huge changes in the next decade or so. I mean, we have so many existing identified challenges in engineering and technology and groundwater remediation and soil treatment and there's certainly an increased interest in PFAS and PFOS and those types of chemicals. Certainly with the Biden administration, there's been an increased push for sustainability measures, climate change measures. Some of those things get pretty complicated when you're talking about, energy efficiency for 1940s era buildings that we're planning to take down anyway. So, looking at some of those energy proposals, maybe don't fit as clearly into our office that they might in some of the other offices, like, energy efficiency and renewable energy. They do all sorts of renewable energy technologies. So yeah, but I do think kind of the nuclear safety, nuclear engineering, all of those fields that we've been employing folks in over the 3 decades will continue to be a key component. I think over the next decade, how robotics, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, as those fields continue to evolve, I think that will impact how we do business, but hard to say exactly how it was. I mean, I think if you compared now to 10 years ago, how we're using robotics now versus then, continues to kind of move with how those fields are evolving. So I think generally speaking, that's where I think it's going, but hard to predict too much beyond that.
I think we've got a question from Jillian.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Kristen. That was a great presentation. I was just kind of curious if the department has thought about climate change with regards to cleanup efforts, and if you think that would play a bigger role, especially in the next coming years, and how the office is looking to kind of help tackle that as well.
Yeah, we're certainly thinking about it. But again, like I said, one of the big challenges is, we're in the business of taking buildings down. So, being thoughtful about incorporating energy measures there is hard. But at the same time, we do some new construction and, building new nuclear facilities. We need to incorporate the best. And Jaren, I see your hand up. Do you need to jump in right now, or? And you're on mute. Okay, I'll just keep going. We do have some opportunities to make some changes as we're doing capital development in some of our facilities. And we are working very closely with the rest of the department on things like that. There are some things like we're making modifications to switch to electric vehicles in our fleets. And so we're working with some of our local governments near our sites to look at projects like, okay, does it make sense to have electric vehicle charging stations outside the fence so that people in the local regions can benefit from them, but we can also benefit from them because we need charging stations for our new electric fleet. So those are the types of those are a couple examples of how things get involved with climate change. Also, there's a lot of research into how long-term climate change can impact our facilities, our actual locations. With we just had a pretty extreme wildfire in New Mexico that was in close proximity to our location at Los Alamos. And so, incorporating those kind of climate change measures into our calculations for safety and, other measures at our sites is certainly going to be a key part of our activities moving forward.
Joanna, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, with respect to that, carbon sequestration has become a really clear and important aspect, and many of your sites have large forests and wetlands, which contribute greatly to that, which seems to me provides a whole new opportunity for your ecological and environmental relationships with your laboratories and with outside scientists, because that's going to become even more important and sort of more necessary. And I wonder whether that's been considered in your kind of workforce.
Yeah, and I can think of one example right off the bat at Savannah River site. They previously, decades ago, had coal-fired power generation on site, and they were able to have a public-private partnership with a biomass facility on site where they were able to, by turning off that coal fired plant and replace it with biomass, the state number of greenhouse gas emissions went way down just by that one activity. So certainly, we have to be thoughtful in the long-term planning of how we incorporate all of those things together, but it's certainly something that's happening real time, and it is a big part of our future planning. All right, Aaron, you've been patient.
Yeah, and I won't take it personally, the fact that you guys waited to the last minute for me.
Gotta let the students go first, Aaron.
No worries. And my question is a simple one, which is basically how, and this is actually for my own interest as well, what brought you to DOE and how did you get interested in the work of EM?
Actually came to the Department of Energy when I was very, very young. And I came in a fairly unusual way, and that was as a political appointee. And for those of you who are maybe not familiar with, they have they call them schedule appointments, or Schedule A. I don't know what Schedule B is, but I was a Schedule C appointee. And what that means for the cabinet agencies, primarily at the headquarters offices for the federal government, they have a specific number of positions in each agency that are political appointments. And that means that you serve at the pleasure of the president. And that also means that for whichever president you're serving, when their term of office is done at noon on January 20th, you are no longer a federal employee. So it is not the normal civil servant experience that most people have. And I came to Department of Energy through that. And my first job was in the Office of Congressional and Intergovernmental Affairs. So we were interfacing with Congress and the governor's offices and several other folks, tribal governments. And that's how I got my first experience with the Office of Environmental Management, because while there are more than 500 federally recognized tribes, the ones that have interest with the EM locations, there's a lot of very serious tribal ties to the environmental management work. And, a lot of those lands were previously tribal lands before the US government came in and started their activities. So, that was my first kind of exposure to the Office of Environmental Management. Also, for anyone who works in environmental management, Hanford is probably the site with the highest interest from members of Congress, members of the media, and it is our largest site and most technologically complicated site. So it's kind of logical, but I think any person who comes into DOE, it's not too long before you get exposed to some sort of no pun intended, exposed to some issue that's of high interest that's originating from Hanford. So that's and after I started as a political appointee, I went to law school, and then when my appointment expired, I had applied as a member of the public for a job in the Environmental Management Office, which is in the office that Jocelyn is currently in, and working kind of stakeholder engagement with local governments and, the state governments and a lot of folks that were part of our relationships. And that was in 2009. I worked in another couple of offices in DOE as Jillian read in my bio. And it's been really neat to kind of be in different parts of the department. And our mission is really compelling, and I find it very satisfying.
All right, thanks, Kristen. I do see some good discussions going on in the chat. We do have 2 hands raised, so let's go to Nick first, and after Nick, we'll go to Joshua. Go ahead, Nick.
Hi, Kristen. This is Nick from University of Central Florida, and I'm interested in in your one of your slides. It says the EM is contracting with small business. I just have a simple question. Do you have some example what some small business is you're mentioning here? So I think you're muted.
the definition of what a small business, or you would like examples of some of our specific small business programs?
Yeah, just say what kind of small business you're contracting, like some examples.
Okay. So the U.S. government has different categories for what a small business is. You know, there's categories like 8A, and if they're minority owned companies, there's some special categories for veteran owned, or there's all sorts of categories, and the Small Business Administration does all of those. But each agency kind of sets goals for themselves about what percentage of the work will go to small business. And then the idea is, it stimulates our economy if we have smaller companies involved. And it's really great for our work too, because oftentimes these small businesses are housed in the locations where we are. So being able to work with partners in our communities is great for building support for our mission and getting the job done well. As far as the variety of companies that are small businesses that we have, I know we have one right now that we're using to support some of our work here in our office, and they're called Tribal Tech. I know they're a Native American owned company, and they bid. In some cases, our contractors select subcontracts, and they use a lot of small businesses there. Sometimes we work directly with small businesses. There's a wide variety of different examples there, and I would say that any of the type of work that we're doing out in environmental management, we've had small businesses participate. Environmental monitoring. Helping us do our public meetings, anything under the sun, environmental services, helping with NEPA document preparation, anything you could probably think of.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Joshua?
Yeah, thank you once again for a great presentation. And I just have one of those package double question deals.
Okay, I'll write it down this time.
So for the first one, for those of us that are in the early career professionals field, or those who are about to become those early career professionals, when is the best time to apply with the USA Jobs kind of site, or just in general? And then the second question would be, what kind of preference do we as the early career professionals, or those going into those careers, get when we kind of look at what kind of site we want to work at, or what kind of work we want to do within that field?
Okay, so as far as when is the best time to apply, I think the CRESP side might have a better answer for as far as when you're going to be done with your current work scope and when you should start looking for things. I would say, but conservatively, that 6 months after you see something on USA Jobs, I wouldn't expect the job to be filled quicker than that. So if that gives you some, but I do think there's a wide variety. This is not going to be I applied on Friday, I had an interview the next week, I got an offer the week after that, and I started the week after that. That's not, please don't have that as an expectation. And I do think 6 months is probably just a good kind of rule of thumb. I'd encourage you to, get real comfortable with the USA Jobs. You can put a resume in there. There are specific formats for resumes that some jobs will want you to follow. Some of the jobs will have requirements for things like mandatory technical qualifications that'll be specific to the job. And it'll be like a 3-page document you prepare in addition to the job. There's a whole variety there, but would just encourage you guys to, throw your name out there. The Clean Energy Corps that I mentioned earlier, I think they are trying to streamline that and make it a little easier for applicants, because they're just taking all of the applications together and then kind of trying to bin them, as opposed to advertising each individual job. So, but that's been underway for a few months, and I know they've received, I'm sure thousands of applications already. So, but the other thing to think about, that you know, what we've talked about here in CRUSP and what we've used over the years in environmental management are kind of different, like pipeline programs that are not necessarily, you know, USA Jobs is the only way to get a job. You know, we have some fellows programs. We used to have kind of worker pipeline things. You know, we still have internships. So there's a number of kind of different ways to get involved with the program that at least give you a foot in the door and, you know, give you a way to establish some relationships. Another thing I'll just mention quickly, since we hadn't yet, we have used Savannah River National Laboratory to administer a minority serving institution program. And recently we got, as part of the 22 budget, an increase of $50 million to that program. Previously it was at $6 million, so now it's at $56 million. And so they're really being able to build out what they were doing before. And some of those are research internships, and you don't have to be a student at a minority serving institution. I think they're finding ways to kind of expand it for minority students, and you know, would just encourage everybody to also, we can follow up and get you some more information about maybe the links that Savannah River National Laboratory has, and some of their programs. Also, the Department of Energy has a kind of clearinghouse of, they call it STEM Rising, and it's like every single DOE office's programs, internships, you know, opportunities, all in one place, which I would imagine would be helpful for people instead of, you know, us sending you down 50 different rabbit holes. So maybe after this call, we could kind of get people the link to that one, the link to some of the Savannah River National Lab programs. And I know I was actually just in a meeting today where we were talking about doing a better job about consolidating all of the programs in one place in EM, so people would be able to find them easier. So again, I don't have a straight answer to give you, here's the solution, but it is something we're working on. And I think after this call, I can give you some of the existing resources, the STEM Rising, and you know, the programs that we're doing at Savannah River National Laboratory to at least get you a starting list and a way to think about it beyond just USA Jobs.
Right, thanks. I know we've got about 5 minutes left. So just to add on to that, and then I will get to the question in the chat, and we'll get to, I think it's Rupanjali. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly, but we have been working with Martha to make sure that all the CRESP students are integrated into some of the other internship programs that we have in our EM organization. And I think you'll be getting invitations to some of those webinars, if you will. One of them is going to focus on, you know, the benefits of federal government, and come work with us. So you'll get to learn a lot more about these programs and a lot more about our sites in the coming weeks, and build those relationships across our organization. So please be on the lookout for that. I think we've been in touch with Julie to make sure that everybody's email address has been given out. So with that, let me go to Rupanjali, and then I will go to the question in the chat, and then I think we'll probably have to wrap up. So go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hi, Kristen. Again, thank you for a good talk and amazing presentation. I think I have a little of a curious question. Like in your presentation, we saw all of the sites in which, let's say, the DOE and Office of EM has undertaken this project of waste treatment. So I was just wondering, like, what are some of the factors that maybe, you know, DOE considers before finalizing a way of kind of waste disposal, like, you know, whether you want to dispose it in class or you want to grout it. I mean, one of those factors could be, you know, it could be the nature of waste itself, but are there some other factors also that, you know, DOE considers before making like a plan of action?
Yeah, there's a lot of drivers there. And, you know, some of it's the first step is kind of characterizing, you know, what waste we have and what materials we have, and, you know, is there lead in the building? And I think at this point in the program, we've got a pretty good idea of what's out there. And then, you know, we have different repositories for different types of waste. And as far as how we decide what type of work we're doing, you know, oftentimes we're working, well, I'd say most of the time, we're working very closely with the EPA, with the NRC, if applicable, with whichever state we're in, you know, sometimes with the tribal governments, and working together on what a remediation path will be. There are several drivers, environmental laws like CERCLA, RCRA, NEPA, all those things come into play. It's not a, oh, I just looked at the piece of paper and figured out what we're going to do today. This is a very complicated process. There are some authorities that we have been given to do our own autonomy for decision making. We have several DOE orders where we have authority to make decisions on things. Most of those are related to specific radiological areas of expertise. So we're also working closely in locations where I'll give Oak Ridge as an example. We in environmental management are doing the remediation for the activities at Oak Ridge. Some of them are previous activities related to the Cold War, but there's a national laboratory there, and also the National Nuclear Security Administration is there doing active work at Y-12. So, our cleanup work informs their actual footprint, their future activities. They want us to clear a building out because they want to build a new building there for something they need in 5 years. So there's a wide variety of factors that go into making decisions behind any of these sites and these various locations. And Aaron would be a great one to follow up with a lot more detail there, because as he runs the regulatory compliance office, he could give you lots of examples of how we're doing that across the board. I did see Kathy Higley's comment in the chat. I can address that quickly since I know we're running out of time. Rad protection, health physics was not an intentional oversight to not list them in there. I would say our needs in both of those fields are continuing. They have been a huge part of the program all these years, and I don't see that changing into the future. So, take heart, health physicists and rad protection experts. We definitely need you all, and those are huge needs in, I would say, in retirement and succession planning space. The pandemic exposed for us the reality of the challenge of having multiple folks in these fields, and dealing with having a pipeline of future workers in those fields. So I did not mean to give the impression that those two weren't priorities in our program. They will continue to be so.
All right, so I do think we have hit our 3 o'clock time. I know that you might still have additional questions, so please, you've got all of our emails. You've got Kristen's email. I know you're each connected with a mentor in the EM organization, so please reach out. You could also reach out to Julie. She'll funnel questions to us as well, but I know we do have a lot more webinars coming up for you over the summer to share additional information about our EM organization. So we look forward to continuing this engagement with each of you, and wish you all the best with your studies. Start that process early for USA jobs, as Kristen was saying. Get familiar with some of these jobs that are out there, because we need you to help us. So we're looking for new creative solutions for our work, as you've heard about. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kristen. Good job. Good to see you. It's good
Nice
me
to see
working.
you, Kevin. Have a good weekend.
It's good that working with me did not drive you out of the department. So
Nope. See you next time.
see you next time. Thank you.